Phantom Punch Podcast, episode 10. We're talking about Yuki Yoza versus Jonathan Haggerty. Or if you guys are really annoyed at that, it should be Haggerty versus Yoza since Haggerty won. Kick, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing absolutely spectacular. Thank you for asking.
Kick, you want to start us off on your initial reads on Yoza versus Haggerty?
I really enjoyed the fight. I thought it was great. I thought it was a nice two-way technical between them. Haggerty was the definite winner, mostly through his control of the first 3 rounds, and the way in which I diverged from a lot of other people on the internet in what they thought of the fight is I don't think people gave Yoza enough credit because those last 2 rounds, he was really able to respond well to the answers Haggerty brought to his game while still working within his style to really come forward and then start to enforce his game, especially in the 5th round.
I made the mistake of looking at other people's opinions before watching this fight. Absolutely blown away with Haggerty's game plan and the way Yoza adjusted to it in the last rounds, which, like you said, not enough people are giving Yoza credit for those last 2 rounds, which honestly understandable because Yoza lost, which everybody's always results based. So there's that. But I enjoyed this fight. Haggerty actually abandons his kicking game and mainly focuses on the jab and the pivot, which allows him to keep turning Yoza, and Yoza didn't have any answer for it.
The jab and the pivot were the bedrock to his game here in keeping himself safe and scoring points in the dead spaces of the fight. He was also doing a great job at preventing Yoza's inside kicks, his Yoza kick, by just lifting his leg up and propagating a stance change by moving that leg that he lifted backwards to flow into the opposite stance. And he would often throw a beautiful 1-2 off of that, where he'd sit down, jump down into his stance, almost like a split step, off of moving his leg backward to then attack Yoza as he's recovering from the kick. What made that so special was the fact that almost all of Yoza's combinations come on the tracks and off of him throwing an initiating kick. Haggerty was able to punish him right after that initiating kick, so he was never really able to get his combinations going. Because after Haggerty threw something, he was then already jabbing to reestablish distance to end the combination and pivoting off.
One of the ways to improve anybody's defense, this is an application for anybody that spars or competes, isn't fancy head movement or pivots, even though pivots is what won Haggerty this fight. It's the ability to jab after you finished an exchange, and that's something Haggerty did really well in this fight.
Reestablishing distance that way and preventing Yoza, who enjoys that head-to-head infight, keeping Haggerty safe from that. Haggerty was actually able to land these lovely uppercuts that, because Yoza, after he kicks or while he's kicking, just as the high guard and hunches down in his stance, and then a left hook off the uppercut to take advantage of his posture coming up. He really had all these great tools that nullified Yoza's offense at the source of his offense, rather than letting him get off at all. The third tenet of his approach throughout the fight that was most clear in these first 3 rounds was how he was utilizing knees, where as Yoza would come forward, he would throw a nice big knee to his midsection. It would often land real clean. From a more macro point of view, once he kneed, he was in a position where Yoza would usually like to fight. They were in close, they were head-to-head or head-to-chest, head-to-shoulder, but he would then just clinch up and smother all offense in like a proper clinch.
That reverse cross guard is something Jack Slack wrote a big article on. It allows Yoza to defend knees, not in the conventional way. The problem is, like Jack Slack has said, is that he's not able to get his combinations going. Haggerty is able to stop a lot of Yoza's offense even after that by grabbing onto a collar tie.
Where some people might have thought that it was boring, which it wasn't. It was a beautiful, active back foot performance by Haggerty. It wasn't like a Lyoto Machida Anderson Silva back foot in their most tepid fights where they're just kind of waiting for the guy to come forward. Yoza was going to come forward, and Haggerty was constantly having offensive tricks to nullify Yoza. Until that 3rd round, Yoza really wasn't able to land a clean calf kick. He just hit a couple hooks to the body clean, maybe, and a couple leaping left hooks. Yoza was not able to get going throughout those first 2 rounds especially, and Haggerty just had a beautiful game plan that was perfectly suited to take advantage of Yuki Yoza's habits.
To add to your point about people saying that this was boring. Maybe the first 3 rounds you could argue that because it's pretty much the same exchange happening over and over again. It's Haggerty using the jab, Haggerty using his lead hand to turn Yoza and pivot offline, and then ending exchanges with the jab, and then using the knee to stifle a lot of Yoza's offense. When you do get to the 4th and 5th round, Yoza adapts really well. If you want to expand on that.
This is where the fight got a lot more in terms of like the barn burner everybody was expecting, because it was two-way offense throughout. Haggerty, he didn't really do anything different. He was mostly just doing what he did because it was so well suited to Yoza. But Yoza was finally finding answers. That started in the 3rd round, where the first thing he started to nullify was the clinch after Haggerty would knee. Yoza did a really great job at getting his hands and forearms in between them as like frames to make space, and bicep ties even, where he could then push Haggerty off rather than having the clinch. And that push is another way in which Yoza is really good at initiating his offense. Early in the rounds, even when Yoza had Haggerty cornered, which is his prime time where he buzzsaws through people, he did not get anything going, and Haggerty would just circle off. Now that he was actually able to push off, prevent the clinch, he could more reliably get Haggerty to the geography of the ring where he does his best work.
Somewhere within the 2nd or 3rd round, Yoza has Haggerty backed up into one of the corners of the cage. He has him checking, and Yoza doesn't go with his typical left hook upstairs, left hook to the body, then Yoza kick. He lets Haggerty off, which, again, not great. That's something that Diego Lopez and the Team Lobo crew do when they're fighting somebody who wants to skirt on the outside of the cage. And they'll just relieve the pressure. One of the things that Yoza did do well in the 4th and 5th rounds, when he did get Haggerty's back to the cage or back to the boundary, he was able to get his combinations off, which he wasn't able to do in the first 3 rounds.
A big part that allowed him to do that was where Haggerty would knee or throw the uppercut as Yoza was doing the Yoza kick and his inside kicks to start his combinations. That would stifle him. But in those 4th and 5th rounds, he kind of just grit his teeth and came forward with a little bit more abandon and said, all right, I'm going to land this kick. Even if you land something, I'm going to keep coming forward, try and smother your offense, back you to the cage, push you. He got real physical with Haggerty in those last 2, and then started his classic combination work, hitting beautiful left hooks to the body. He also started coming in with these leaping left hooks to the head and body or off of a floating knee that just gave him a different entry into his combinations. And so he started to add little things that gave Haggerty a couple more questions to answer, and also just got physical enough where Haggerty might land some offense, but at the end of the day, once Yoza actually backs you up, he's going to be landing 6 strikes on you. So he's going to be the more favorable in the differential at the end of that.
Yoza didn't actually cut the ring well. He was still getting turned in the 4th and 5th rounds. He was attacking while he was getting turned, which is not a conventional thing to do when you're fighting a good ring general like Haggerty. It was interesting to see how he adapted within his own style instead of just completely doing something different.
Exactly. He would throw like this little flicker jab or just hook or a leg kick as he's usually punches as he's turning. He's using the turn to propagate his own punches. It doesn't have to knock him out. It doesn't even have to land with too much authority. It just does enough to say, hey, I'm still here. I'm not going to let you get off and just keep moving. And that might stung Haggerty just for a moment for Yoza to get back in front of him and continue working, which it did a couple times.
Haggerty was still trying to turn him, but after the initial turn, Haggerty would concede the infight.
He would concede it, or whether that's because Yoza still was landing enough attritive work through his kicks and body hooks throughout that just slowed him down enough. Nobody was on their hands and knees like Derek Lewis in this fight. That attritive work slows down people just enough, or you're giving enough questions to kind of neurally slow them down just enough, where now they have to contend with a little more. They're just a second behind where they were in the earlier fight, for Yoza to finally keep him in front of him for a second to land 4 strikes, and all he really needs is a second.
Haggerty's game plan was to stay on the outside for most of the fight and not get caught in a firefight, which is a very labor-intensive style. There's that to consider in the 4th and 5th round as to why Yoza was able to get his offense off.
Mm-hmm. And that is the one thing with such a mobile game, physically moving around the ring so much, is labor-intensive. the attritive work, it'll get to anyone, but it's going to be a little more noticeable as it piles up because you're going to be moving that much less. It's interesting because he did exactly what he needed to do, but it's almost one of those fights where if you're watching it objectively, it reminds me of the Reyes-Jones fight, where Jones won the last 2 rounds, so he should win the fight because if this kept going, he would have won. And it's like, no, you can't look at it like that. It's a sport. Haggerty did a great job of diffusing Yoza's work, but it was nearly as impressive in the fact that while Haggerty was taking away Yoza's A game, he found weapons and places to attack that allowed him to reinforce his A game in those later rounds after being completely nullified in the first round.
I'm saying that we should give credit to both of these fighters instead of just saying, oh, Haggerty just dominated this fight. It's somewhat true because he did make Yoza look impotent in the first 3 rounds, and there was a lot of trades in the last 2 rounds.
Those trades favored Yoza a lot. If you're trading with Yoza, you are almost assuredly going to be losing that trade.
Jack Slack described Yoza's game as infighting with kicks. I describe Yoza as somebody who's really dangerous on the tracks. For those of you that are new, on the tracks means if we're both in a fighting stance, in an orthodox stance, and it's close stance matchup, my lead foot is pointed towards your rear foot and your rear foot is pointed towards my lead foot. So that's what on the tracks means. Yoza is a master at punishing people who stay on that track.
I think that's a perfect way to synthesize this game. It's easier to do that with this fight. How this was a slightly out of type performance from Haggerty. He wasn't just trying to enforce his own style. He was building a game around nullifying somebody else's style.
Haggerty is also an on the tracks fighter. When you look at his fighting style, he's more of all the way in, all the way out, and then he disguises his entries on the track. So you don't really know when he's coming in, but he's always coming in on the tracks. That's why he got knocked out against Superlek, because Superlek timed him coming in with a hand trap. Understand what Haggerty is before this and how completely different his game was in this fight and how Yoza had to adapt mid-fight. It's just a great fight overall.
The context only helps this fight because Yoza was on a spectacular little run.
Haggerty fought for the vacant kickboxing title against Fabricio Andrade, which I've always said very stupid because it's against an MMA fighter who likes to play on the outside and likes to exploit the fact that MMA fighters like to blitz into range. And then when you see him fight in kickboxing, it's just cover up and shell up, which Haggerty is just going to style all over. Very stupid, not legitimate whatsoever. So Yuki Yoza, very credentialed kickboxer. So for Haggerty to beat him, very impressive.
Watch Yuki Yoza K1 highlight, and you'll see everything you need to know about why this is so impressive.
There were people actually saying Haggerty is the greatest striker ever after watching the Fabricio Andrade fight.
That was a little more one marketing, the multiple weight classes and 2 striking sports that that's what they were saying, you know?
Yeah, but against Fabricio Andrade, no.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, Haggerty's great. He's spectacular, but lost to Superlek and Rod Tank twice.
Right.
Who are great. Superlek nowadays is a little hit and miss, and Rod Tang has his own problems in terms of his competition. Still an impressive guy, but, you know, also who one tries to call like the best Muay Thai fighter of all time. And it's like, it ain't Rod Tang, bro. Rod Tang's great. He's a lot of fun. I love watching him fight, but it ain't Rod Tang.
This is a very good win for Haggerty. Very impressive.
Yeah. It might be his most impressive win in kickboxing.
The Muay Thai guys can fight over how much they hate Haggerty in the comments.
Exactly, yeah. A dirty farang.
Yeah.
Ghost and I recorded another film room. Hopefully you might be getting these a little more regularly should everything work out. We're having a lot of fun with them recently. They're funnily enough on a little film room that I pseudo designed. We'll say pseudo. With the help of some online elements. Thanks, Claude. It's really cool. I had a lot of fun with it. I have a lot of fun doing this with Ghost. So if you want to see more of these, let us know. I think we both have a good time. We both look at fights a little differently and differently enough where we see a lot of things, but we each see things from a tad different context.
Both of the film rooms that we've done, they'll be on both of our substacks. So you can find it on mine at phantompunchbreakdowns.substack.com. And then you can also find it on Kicks at movementmarshals.com. The only thing we ask is if you want to watch it, support either one of us. It doesn't matter which one.
Yep.
Support either one of us, and then you'll get access to the content.
If you want to support us both, great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome if you could support us both.
I was gonna say, mine's only $6 a month. I think yours is the same.
Yeah, mine's about the same. $5 a month, $55 a year.
It's a couple lattes.
I will see you guys next time on Phantom Punch Podcast, episode 11, whenever that will be.
See you guys later. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.